It's easy for me to do it.
Yeah,
Okay.
right.
Yeah, well, of course we're involved in it, and I know one Jew, I think observant Jew, who has been doing a great deal of work on environment, and that's the man to my left. In fact, we both have written about the subject, and others have written about it too. Other issues, many, as rabbis grow, as our people grow up into the various professions, whether it's the rabbinate or the academy or the Rosh Yeshiva, many of them deal with problems of this sort. They don't focus on them exclusively, but they certainly make a contribution of one sort or another, sometimes more, sometimes less.
Yoda, and then Yosef.
תודה רבה. Provocative and most insightful. I remember maybe the end of the 50s, the early 60s, the Esquire magazine had a major piece, and it was called The Spectre of the Vanishing American Jew, which predicted that by the turn of the millennium, there would be clusters, pockets, here and there, New York, Chicago, Los Angeles. That would be the remnant. And here we are, 50 odd years later. My question is there a strategic planning taking place in light of the crisis situation which you describe? And what do you predict will be the scene in the next 50 years in the light of what you describe? And what are the ramifications and the consequences there?
That's almost too big a question for me to answer. But it was not Esquire. It was Look magazine.
Well, you look.
Look magazine, yes. It reminds me of
That's typical.
you remember when it had in theology the famous God is dead controversy.
Yeah.
So on 135th Street subway station in New York, someone said, Nietzsche is dead. Signed God. Look magazine folded up a long time ago, and we're still here. But the problem is a real one. That's what I was really talking about. I am pessimistic in the short run. In the long run, I'm optimistic because I do believe in Mashiach. As long as you don't talk about him. There's one Semitic statement says that Mashiach will come when people stop talking about him. We have violated that very strongly in certain areas. The more you talk about him, the less likely he is to come because you'll scare the wits out of him. But what I see is basically American Jewry will be very much reduced in numbers, which will gradually fill up if we can solve certain problems, economic problems, which involve family, getting married earlier, and less singles, more children, and then education. The cost of education.
But given present trends,
Yeah.
can you give us some kind of a picture of what you predict on the basis of your observation and experience?
I don't know, well, it's hard to do it, but I would say in 50 years, I choose the number 50 because I know certainly I won't be around then to be told I was coming to false prophecy. In our 50 years, I suspect that the total number of Jews in America will be far smaller than it is now. That it will be much more Jewishly devoted, much more Jewishly learned. It will have less political clout. And the problem is, will it be only intensive and inner directed, or will it be able to open up to the outside world? I really don't know. It's very difficult to predict that because I'm not even sure what it is now. I mean, it's a big country, and the Jewish community is dispersed. Here in Israel, you're all, from here to, if you have to travel an hour, you think it's a continent away. In America, you can travel for hours, and you're still in America. And in every place you have a Jewish community, so it's very difficult to be able to foretell it. The smaller communities will probably not make it. Smaller communities will not make it. They simply won't make it because they don't have enough of a constituency, enough of a membership to be able to break through. But in New York, in Chicago, in Los Angeles, in the larger cities, especially including middle-sized cities that cluster around the larger cities, you probably will have Jewish, remnant of the Jewish community that will be more intensive. And, it also depends what attitude will Jews 25, 50 years do they take about guarding the integrity of their families. Their children should remain Jews. Will they turn their backs on the outside world, or will they somehow manage to do what we're trying to do right now? I find it hard to give that answer, but I know it will be smaller and more intensively Jewish.
You say, and then Edward Cohen.
My question comes from a deep worry about the polarization within Israeli society between the Orthodox and the non-Orthodox, where I think the non-Orthodox very much consider the Orthodox as one homogeneous group. Having had an experience last week, together with my husband in Spanish Morocco, in Melilla, being in a community where children from the age of 3 learn every day 2 hours of Limudei Kodesh and of Hebrew. My question goes towards education. And my question to you is, do you have any program or thinking within your institution how to outreach to the non-Orthodox community, trying to get more of a Jewish identity and education to these groups?
Good question. First, let me tell you the problem we have. We're not producing enough personnel for America. We are not producing enough personnel for outside, west of the Hudson River and north of Englewood. How can I tell you? Our graduates want to stay in larger Jewish communities for one reason, not because they're selfish, not because they're afraid of the outside world, but because they have young children. If they go with a young child to some orphanage shtetl in Wisconsin or Wyoming, their children will not get a Jewish education. You know what the Lubavitcher do? They send their children away before their bar mitzvah or right after the bar mitzvah to Crown Heights or the other relatives in larger communities. Not everyone is willing to make that sacrifice of separating from your own children. So we have a very serious problem. That's why I fear that the smaller communities will probably not make it. It doesn't mean we're going to ignore them purposely, but it's a fact of life that seems to be developing. And many of these small communities, when they send their children to New York, at least the yeshiva, the family is saved. At least in most cases. Again, there's no guarantee. But in most cases, the children are saved. So about Morocco, I don't know. I can't even tell you about west of Queens. It depends very much on the particular makeup of the constituency of that particular Jewish community. But by and large, I think we're very concerned by it. We put a lot of our efforts, and now we have a new effort about we just found my successor just founded a very good organization, a very good department called the Center for the Jewish Future. It's a little bit, shall I say, grasping on too much for the Jewish future. But look, all of us have to contribute to the Jewish future, and part of it is going to be outreach. The outreach is done. We do it. We started the outreach movement in America way back in the, I would say, the late 50s or early 50s. And then it was picked up by others, by the Haredi communities. It was picked up by Lubavitch, who are doing the best job of all. So that's why I say we have to keep your eye on Chabad, because if we work with them without becoming them, we probably have a good chance of greater success.
Edward and then Bill Millman.
You spoke about the tuition problem, the $20,000 a year day school in yeshiva students. Of course, it's a two-edged sword, because a lot of people make aliyah, believe it or not, to escape the tuition problem. What effort is being made to establish foundations and trust funds that will subsidize day school education in America? We have a museum about to be erected here by a group in Los Angeles that's spending $150 million, a Museum of Tolerance. what effort has been made, for example, to convince those people that the $150 million would be far better spent in a program to subsidize the yeshiva and day school tuition? And parenthetically, there's a high school in Ramat HaSharon called the Alexander Muss High School, which accepts students for an 8-week program here, many of them from assimilated or mixed marriage families. It's only 8 weeks, but they did a survey not long ago showing that 88% of the students who attend this program marry within the faith, which illustrates the impact of Jewish education even for under a limited curtain. So what efforts are being made to overcome this tuition problem, which is the greatest obstacle to Jewish education in the United States?
Listen, I had to raise money to keep Yeshiva University alive. When it came in 1976, we were at the verge of bankruptcy. So we overcame it. How did you do it? By indulging in a vocation that is not quite elegant. It's called schnorring. You know what schnorring is? It's supposed to be a schnorrer. You go down and you have to raise funds. You have to beg, plead, threaten. I mean, any way I used to be able to get it. The same thing is true. You know, so people say, why does it cost that much money to educate a child in a day school? The answer is because you have to have teachers that are decent. And not everyone wants to sacrifice his life on the altar of Jewish education by giving up a family and bread in order to be able to teach at salaries that are ridiculous. So as the salaries go up, tuition goes up. Tuition goes up, insurance goes up, everything goes up. Economically, it is the only way to do it. We can only do it if we had the massive support from the organized Jewish community, and has not been forthcoming the way it should. Some federations and some communities are more generous to education. Others talk about it. But we will not be saved by talk. We'll be saved by cash and devotion. What are we doing? There are some philanthropists, really super philanthropists in America, are trying to do things that are very good. But it's not going to help our schools very much. But let's say, what do you call the program? The Birthright program. Excellent program. It will help. It will not save Jewish life by itself. Because you have to have, look, if you can take a person who's 18 and 19 or 20 years old and turn him on by a visit to Israel, imagine how much more solid it would be if he started when he was 5 years old. I mean, you can't deny facts. The more you educate a child, the more likely it is he or she will marry Jewish or have Jewish children and want to continue the tradition and the people. Without the tradition, there won't be any people. Certainly not in America. Here you have an excuse, you have a state. I don't know how long that paradigm is going to serve you well. We all have to. It's a word that should not fall only on the leadership of the community, of the education community. It's everyone's problem. I don't always feel we're getting that ear. Some philanthropists have turned on to Jewish education. That's true, but not enough. There are many federations that simply regard an old age home or a schwitzbad or whatever it is, and Israel, and Jewish education falls by the wayside. There are some better signs, but I get crying. People cry to me. I call from Midwestern cities, let's say. Happened 2-3 weeks ago. Send us teachers. We can get Haredi teachers, but that's not what we want. We don't want to have teachers of our children who will tell their kids, you can't go to college. So we have to produce them. Now, you know, I tell you, I was wondering, just a few moments, I was invited a few years ago to come to Canada to Montreal to speak about Jewish education. And it was posed as half of them were educators and half were supporters. It was a great group, fantastic people. So I said my piece, and I finished. I knew exactly what's going to happen. Question and answer period. The first question, someone gets up and says, Rabbi Lamm, tell us, what is Yeshiva University doing about producing teachers? Exactly what I expected. So I said, okay, I will answer the Jewish way. I'll answer your question with another question. But I want you to give me an honest answer without thinking, but something that comes immediately from your own heart and soul. How many of you want your children to go into Jewish education? Out of 400 people, I got 4 hands came up. And I feel they came up not because they wanted it, but because they were embarrassed there should be no one to raise a hand. I mean, it requires sacrifice. It doesn't mean you're going to starve, but it means you're going to give up professions in medicine, in law, in Wall Street, and these kids can go into any area they want. So those who are going into it, some are better, some are worse, but all of them are sacrificing because they could have done much better for themselves. So we have a real crunch. It depends really upon the federations or the organized Jewish, instead of saying that, the synonym, the organized Jewish community and its philanthropists willing to understand that it's already 1 minute before noon, before midnight. And if they don't wake up, it's going to be tragic. Will they wake up in time? All of us have to become ambassadors to talk them into it.
Okay, Edward, and then Mr. Barakat.
I forget who it was that said that Chabad is the religion that is most similar to Judaism.
It is.
I want to ask a question about the role of women in modern Orthodoxy. There's a synagogue less than a mile from here called Shira Chadasha, which was founded by David Hartman's daughter, and it's become amazingly successful, popular, especially amongst what we call the Anglo-Saxon. I've been there twice, and on one occasion I sat next to some professor of Jewish studies, and I said to him, "Is this place Orthodox?" And he did like this. "Al Gvul," he said. But another friend of mine who goes there regularly said to me, "Edward, this is the future." And I would like you to comment, because you're supposed to be talking about the future of modern Orthodoxy. Is the Shira Chadasha model, which you may or may not be familiar with, is this the future?
It's the future for those people who like Shira Chadasha. It's a matter. I don't think that the future of Jewish life in America and Israel depends on how much we have intergender singing congregational songs. I mean, these are all right. If you fear that you want to have, look, they try to observe, and I don't know if they do because I'm not that well acquainted with it. I just know when some of my people tell me, I visited that Shira Chadasha, and there's one like it in New York on the West Side, and it's very beautiful. I said, so since when is beauty the criterion of a real shul? I mean, my grandfather davened in a little shtibel, and believe me, he had more religion, genuine religion, packed in that little shtibel than our biggest and largest congregations with the most magnificent temples do. It's beautiful. If you like that, you like it. Okay, it's better than nothing. It's better than not davening at all. If you don't like it, you don't like it. I mean, I don't see this as this is not a critical point. The future of it does require Jewish women to learn. That's important. To sing together, to lead services. Look, I never led a service on a Shabbat because I haven't got a voice and I haven't got an ear, and it never bothered me. The Kohen get up to duchen. I don't duchen because I'm not a Kohen. There are certain things that apply, some things that don't apply. The world will not stand or fall on whether women can lead a service in shul in a limited way. It will passively stand or fall on women being educated, and educated in the full array of Jewish education. That's the point of the future. This is, okay, interesting, but not critical.
We have 4 more questions, and I'm closing the list. Mr. Barakat and Ambassador David Efrat.
You said that Aguda in 50 years will be us. Okay, I'll repeat that. You said that Aguda in 50 years will be us. Now, if one looks at Reformed Jews in the United States, in the last 50 years they've moved towards us somewhat. I recall when I first went to visit Temple Emmanuel, I was told it's such a beautiful temple. I was asked to take off a kippah. Today, most of the people there wear kippot, I believe. Will, in 50 years, the Reform and Conservatives be more like us?
Well, the Reform have managed to do something which is quite remarkable. They managed at one and the same time to move to the right and to the left. Either it's a sign of magnificent flexibility, or it's a sign of psychological problem. I don't know how to phrase it. They moved to the right in certain external matters. I mean, they believe in studying all night on the Leo Shvuot, which is not the most important index of Jewish observance, but it's interesting. Some of them are going much more to the right. They actually, well, they have kosher homes. It's interesting, but at the same time they have patrilineal homes. Patrilineal, you know what patrilineal is? That, as opposed to Jewish law, which in the very beginning said that Jewishness depends upon the mother. Whether you're a Kohen or Levi, Israel depends upon the father. Basic Jewishness is the mother. They've abandoned that. So now, we don't, if I'm introduced to a Reform rabbi, I don't know if he's Jewish or not. A young Reform rabbi, because it's only recent, whether he or she is Jewish. I can't tell. The time may come when you'll have rabbis who are not Jewish according to halacha. How are we going to relate to them? I don't know. I know, but it's not good. It's not good at all. So I can't really tell you about the Reform movement. I have difficulty enough knowing about my Modern Orthodox movement.
David, and afterwards, Mr. Mandel.
I want to relate to your remarks concerning the vanishing Jew in the United States and Chabad. In my personal experience, I saw Chabad at work in Latin America, especially in Brazil, where the vanishing of the Jews is much worse than in the United States. And I saw Chabad doing a wonderful work in rescuing Jews and